The second session ended the same way the first had. A vote, a gavel strike, and the soft murmur of 300 counselors collecting their folios and moving toward the exit arches as though they had somewhere more important to be. Which, I suppose, they did. The Scythe Containment Council had 17 open files. Ours had just been closed. I did not move from my seat. The presiding auditor, a tall Scythe elder named Korath Vale, paused at the edge of the dais and looked down at me with the particular expression his species used for mild administrative pity, mandibles half folded, the secondary eyelids partially drawn. He had the look of someone watching a stray animal sit in a doorway and waiting for it to realize the door was no longer open. "Attaché Brennan," he said, "the matter of Vethara Station is concluded. The all-clear certification stands, all residents accounted for. No anomalous biological signature detected within compact registered survey range." He paused. "You are, of course, welcome to file a minority opinion through the standard forms. Submission window is 14 days. I nodded once. "Thank you, Auditor Vale." He waited a moment longer, then left. The chamber emptied around me in tears. The Scythe delegates in their pale ceremonial sashes, the Vethani observers who had watched the whole proceeding from the far gallery without speaking, the court clerks stacking their recording tablets in neat columns. I sat in the center of it and let them go. I had arrived at this chamber carrying a single case, brushed steel, latched, roughly the size of a field medical kit. I had set it on the table in front of me at the start of the first session and had not opened it. I had not opened it in the second session either. The council had noticed it. Korath Vale had glanced at it twice during his closing summary. He had not asked about it. He should have asked about it. I waited until the chamber was empty except for 2 court clerks finishing their stack near the east arch. Then I stood, picked up the case, and walked it to the front of the chamber, to the presentation rail that ran along the base of the primary display screen. I set it on the rail. I unlatched it. I removed a single data card, a resonance density scan, full spectrum, conducted 6 days ago by a human biosurveillance unit working a grid that the council's own survey had not covered, because it fell 3 kilometers outside the compact registered survey boundary. I slid the card into the rail's reader port. The screen above me lit. The 2 clerks stopped stacking. The scan showed the interior architecture of the Scythe Containment Council's primary relay node. The relay node physically attached to the north face of this building, the one that had received, processed, and transmitted the all-clear certification for Vethara Station 4 weeks ago. The relay node that certified us clean. Inside it, distributed across 7 of its 18 conduit chambers, was a biological mass, not mechanical interference, not a calibration artifact. Biological, distributed, structured. The density mapping showed organized filament arrays, thermal clustering consistent with regulated metabolic activity, and in conduit chamber 4, a concentration dense enough that our scanner had flagged it as a secondary nest signature. It had not been there 8 months ago. Our pre-survey baseline confirmed that. I had timed this for the 3rd session, the one that had been scheduled for tomorrow, the formal closure proceeding, where the certified all-clear would be entered into permanent compact record and the file sealed. I had intended to do this in front of the full council. But Korath Vale had moved the closure vote forward by 2 days without notice, and so the full council had already voted, and the file was already sealed, and I was standing in an empty chamber with a display screen that was showing them what was living inside their own relay infrastructure. I heard footsteps at the east arch. One of the court clerks had left. The other, younger, a junior Scythe archivist with the pale, iridescent markings of a first-cycle appointment, had come back. He stood in the archway and looked at the screen for a long moment without speaking. "What is that?" he said finally. "Resonance density scan," I said. "Conduit 7 is the clearest image. Conduit 4 has the highest concentration." He took a step into the chamber, then another. He was reading the coordinate overlay on the screen now, matching the grid reference to something he apparently knew well. His secondary eyelids went flat, the Scythe expression for something closer to alarm than the auditor's administrative pity. "That coordinate set," he said slowly, "that's the north relay." "Yes." "This building's north relay." "Yes." He stood very still. Then he turned and walked back toward the east arch quickly, not running but close to it, and I heard him in the corridor calling for someone whose title I did not catch. I turned back to the screen. The filament arrays in Conduit 7 were beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with what they implied. Organized, patient. Whatever had built them had taken its time. There were 14 Terran children missing from Vethara Station. Not misclassified, not relocated, not administratively reassigned to another registry, the way the Council's all-clear had suggested. Missing. Their families had filed individual displacement reports, and the Council had reviewed those reports, and had found, in its judgment, no corroborating biological evidence of an anomalous presence within survey range. Survey range. 3 kilometers short of where our scanner had been working when it found this. Korath Vale returned 11 minutes later. He came through the north arch, not the east one, and he came with 4 other counselors, 2 senior auditors, and a compact biosurveillance officer I had not seen in either of the 2 previous sessions. They moved to the display screen and stood in a line in front of it, and for a moment nobody said anything. The biosurveillance officer, a Vethani, broad-shouldered, gray-scaled along the jaw, leaned in close to the coordinate overlay. His breathing changed. Korath Vale turned to look at me. "Attaché Brennan," he said, and his voice had lost the administrative register entirely. "When was this scan conducted?" 6 days ago, I said. "Survey grid Vethara 7 Delta, 3 kilometers north of your registered boundary." "And you have had this for 6 days." "I have had this for 6 days," I said. "I brought it to the first session. I was prepared to present it at the 3rd session before the file was sealed. The 3rd session was moved." He heard what I did not say. He did not respond to it directly. He turned back to the screen. The Vethani biosurveillance officer had straightened up. He spoke quietly to the 2 auditors beside him in a dialect I did not fully carry, but the word he used twice, the word that had no clean translation in Compact Standard, but that every human biosurveillance officer who worked this region learned in the first month, meant something between asterisk already spread and how long has it been moving. One of the senior auditors turned to Vale and said, very quietly, that the North Relay handled signal routing for 6 additional council facilities, all of them inside this district, all of them within the density threshold the scan was showing. Korath Vale's secondary eyelids drew fully shut. He stood like that for a moment. Then he looked at me again, not with administrative pity this time, with something I did not have a clean name for in any language. "The file," he said, "will need to be reopened." "Yes," I said, "it will." "And the children." "The scan also logged entry vector traces," I said. "Conduit too. They lead outward. We have a direction." I reached into the case and removed the second card. "My team is ready to move when the council authorizes it. We have been ready for 6 days." I set the card on the rail beside the first one. Nobody spoke. The display screen held its image, 7 conduit chambers, 14 days of patient construction, a certification of all clear glowing in the file header at the bottom of the frame. I picked up my case and latched it shut. "Attaché," Vale's voice stopped me at the arch. "Why did you not present this before the vote?" I looked back at him across the empty chamber, at the screen, at the nest mapped in clean white filament lines against the dark architecture of their own relay node. "I did not want it in the record as a minority opinion," I said. "I wanted it in the record as the reason the vote was wrong." I left them standing in front of it. the authorization came through, before I reached the transit bay.